the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It is Saturday, the 28th of November, and we're so pleased to welcome you back to another exciting edition, a special edition this morning of Alarm Clock. This morning, we're going to be talking about sexual offenses, policy, and activism. And there's a whole lot that we have to say on this topic. This is an extremely topical issue. This is something that is touching everyone right here in our federation. And so it is another exciting edition of Alarm Clock. My name is Joy Napier, and I will be your host for today's program. And I have with me in studios two very well-versed and extremely forward-thinking guests who are joining our panel today. And we will be discussing quite a number of issues. We're going to be speaking about the 16 days of activism that began on the 25th of November and that culminates with Human Rights Day on the 10th of December. We're going to be speaking about the increase that we've seen in gender-based violence since COVID-19. What about right here in the Federation? We'll be talking about our laws, our legislations, and we'll be talking about the way that our society perceives issues of gender-based violence and sexual offenses. So there's a lot. Stay tuned, share the live. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my panelists. Welcome, and I'd like to ask our first panelist to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Desil Hamilton. I am a citizen, just like everybody else, just an average Joe trying to make a difference in the world. And I think that's something that we take for granted. You don't have to be any high society person or some doctor or lawyer, anything about that. You just have to be a regular human being who wants to see the good of their country. We have to all take part in our society. So I'm joining you guys here today. Some of you may know or may not know, but recently I've launched an activism campaign talking about domestic violence and sexual assault in Nevis. Every Thursday for the last 2 weeks, I've been standing outside of the Premier's ministry with my little placards. I was joined by a few more people last week, and it was really good. And we're just advocating and bringing some public awareness to the issue of gender-based violence, the issue of domestic violence, to the issue of sexual assault, and things that we want to see, stuff like a sex offenders registry happen here in St. Kitts and Nevis to be integrated both locally, regionally, and internationally. So those are some passions of mine because this benefits everyone. So we have to get on board as a society and really get that done. I think everybody knows me. I also co-host Legendary with the Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons. That comes on Wednesdays. It's on 2020visionradio.com or 2020 Vision Radio on Facebook. They're trying to move towards getting an FM band, so there's a GoFundMe that they're doing there. So if you want to help, you can always check out their Facebook page and find out more information on that. So that's me in a bundle.
Well, my introduction is not going to be as elaborate. My introduction is going to be short and sweet, succinct. My name is Lenine Blanchett. I am from the island of St. Kitts. I'm a junior attorney practicing criminal law in the Federation. I am from Sadlers/Keon. I am passionate about youth, sports, activism, and women. And so I'm here today to have a conversation with you two and with the listening public and to just raise some questions, have a beautiful discussion this morning, and inform the public about some of the things that we would like to see and to inform the public of their rights as well as things that are available to them and just for us to have a conversation.
Awesome.
All right, excellent. Well, Desil, Lenine, I know we have a lot to discuss. Now, in the general public, I know that there's been a lot of advocacy and a lot of notice being paid, especially since, and I mentioned before, since the 25th of November, our Gender Affairs Department in Nevis and in St. Kitts has been doing a lot to raise awareness. And the 25th of November is a day that was set aside by UN Women, and that's a specific day that was set aside as a day to recognize an end to gender violence and gender-based violence. And so there is this campaign by UN Women to orange the world, and orange is the color that is being used. A campaign to raise awareness around issues of gender-based violence, to raise awareness to domestic violence, to raise awareness to the legislations that exist, and to really shine a spotlight on what is happening in terms of sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. So this is an incredibly timely campaign. And it has been noted that since the incident of COVID-19, where, as we know, the world went into a global lockdown, that cases have been on a sharp rise, that cases of reported domestic violence, of child abuse, have been sharply on the upswing. And, this is as persons have been at home, they've been confined, to very abusive situations. And so this is something that is extremely concerning for us as a federation. This is something that, we need to shine a light on. So I'm going to turn it over to my panelists. And I know that, both of you are working in activism in various ways. So we had a brief introduction. And, I'd just like to hear a little bit more. Desil spoke about some of his advocacy work. Maybe if each of you could tell us a little bit more about the work that you've done specifically in sexual offenses, in gender activism.
All right. Well, sexual assault has been a real, passion of mine, and I've always been advocating for it. I think the public needs to understand that advocacy isn't, it's not always a grand scheme. Just bringing awareness to an issue is a big deal. To my Facebook page, I've always been talking about the sexual offenders registry. This thing has been going on. You share posts like that are happening. You share activism stuff that are happening, like the 16 days of activism that's going on. So just making sure that you keep abreast with what's going on around you. You share these things so that persons can know, and you just get up there and go out as well. 2 weeks ago, when I started the activism campaign that I'm doing right now, it was just like, I've been talking about this all the time, and here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we just like to talk. We're always talking, and we're not doing. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not working as much, which is, I guess, a freedom of mine because of COVID-19, and I work in the hospitality tourism industry. My days aren't as packed and as busy as they usually are. So I have a bit more time now on my hands, and what am I doing with this time? You go out there and you do something. So I decided, okay, on Thursday morning, it's a day where the premier usually invites the general public to come and see him and have meetings to speak on whatever discussion that they want. And yeah, I could have just gone inside and had a meeting with him, and that would have been the end of that. But I wanted the persons who are passing by, who are going inside, to see me and stop and ask a question and wonder, why am I here? And what am I doing? And I had my placard, protect our women and children. And just with that simple placard, it like started a movement, a whole movement. And, it was so overwhelming, the response of the public. The post was shared over 100 times. Persons started sending me personal messages and talking about it, shared in WhatsApp, shared all over. So, everybody, just started, persons reached out to me and keep going, keep moving. Yes. This is timely. We need this. We need this conversation. So, me thinking, it's just me and it mightn't be as big a big deal. It ended up being a big deal. And I think people underestimate the power of just a single person and a single movement on a pressing issue. Because a lot of the times, it happens for everyone, humans just in general. We say, okay, we're going to do this. And we have 20 people at the beginning saying, we're going to do this. And as the time comes forward, one drop off. And then when the time comes, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to do this by myself. But sometimes you just have to do this by myself. I was scared in the morning when I left my home. It was after 9. I had my card with me. And I just had some pen scratched onto it with the words. I didn't even have any color or anything. And when I got there, I had it. And someone was like, a lady who was passing to going into city minister, she was like, you need a marker to color your thing so that they can see better. And so she was like, okay, let me check, because she thought that she had one in her bag, but she didn't. So I said, you know what? I know a person or two on the inside. Let me just ask them if I could get a mark or two. And, they were gracious enough to do it. They threw the markers out the window because they were on the second floor and, grabbed it up and I colored it up and everything, so the more persons that came now, they saw. And police officers stopped. They asked about what was going on and they acknowledged the problem. There are persons who work inside various ministries inside of the government who acknowledge the problem and supported the issue. Some of us, because we're in government, we might be able to do certain activism work. Yeah, but people see it. The permanent secretary for the premier, he said, that's a federal issue because he saw me when he was going in, So, he told me, so he's giving me directions of where, we could point, the advocacy and stuff. So people want to see things happen. So, you just have to get involved and I know a lot of people, some people might say, okay, you're trying to run down the government or you're going against the government or whatever. It's not about the government. It's a human rights issue. Everyone deserves to be protected. Our women deserve to be protected. Our children deserve to be protected. Our men deserve to be protected. We talk about gender-based violence, even though women and children are, the more vulnerable of the group. Men are just as much abused. And
definitely, and that's a conversation we definitely need to have here today about the definitions and
we're going to get into that. So, you just take a part because this week, we've had Joy and two of her staff join us on the movement as well. So, people see that it's growing and everything. Other people have committed to next week as well. I really want to get someone to partake here in St. Kitts. I don't know if anybody else has time at that time of the day.
It's a call to action.
You guys could always just reach out. I'm on Facebook, Dessel Hamilton, and we can coordinate because
extend it to weekends.
Extend it to weekends. Well, we can extend it to weekends, but I think the showing, of persons standing in solidarity when the government is active.
Perhaps location.
The location for me is really important, in front of the government building. It's not, so they can see and everyone else can see that we are standing up for them.
And these are our legislators. These are the ones who are making the laws.
These are the ones that are making the laws, so you're bringing it to the parliamentarians, So that's it for me. So if anyone has time and they want to join in, we have 2 more weeks. We can try and coordinate that in St. Kitts. But so
when it comes to making laws, I know Lenny knows a lot about that. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your advocacy work, and then we definitely will have to get into a discussion of the terms. So what are these terms we're actually throwing around? What does sexual offense mean? What does rape mean? So we're going to have a discussion about that. But go ahead, Lenny.
Well, my activism, firstly, is through youth and sports. I've always been an ardent sports supporter. I came from a sports family, and my mother was very particular about having a netball team and a club for my community. And so we always poured ourselves into the women of our community. We always had a netball team where we would hone skills, we would take them on group trips just to have a community for women. And I've been doing that with my mother since I was 5. I won't tell you how old I am now, but quite a few years have passed since. And presently I still have a netball team where I ensure that there is some representation and some community for women, for us to bond, for us to enjoy things together, and for us to communicate. And you'll be surprised to know some of the things that a woman or a younger lady would tell you when they're comfortable enough with you and they have confidence in you. And so it may not be direct activism, but it helps with the conversation, definitely. And it helps with awareness. It helps with comfortability, because you must be firstly comfortable and confident in that person and their abilities, and whether they are one who would keep confidential information and give you proper advice in order for that person to approach you. And so my small space with my parents and with my community and through sports has helped in that initiative as well.
All right, so let's look at some of the statistics, because when we're saying that domestic abuse and sexual violence is on the rise, the numbers, if we actually look at it, it's really staggering. It's overwhelming. Globally, 243 million women and girls were abused by an intimate partner, and that's just in the past year. And less than 40% of those women who experience violence actually report it or seek help. Now, when we had the lockdown, We had calls to helplines increase almost by 5 times or 6 times. So they were dealing with 6 or 7, even up to 7 times as many calls to report incidences of violence. And, bearing in mind that those are only the ones that had the courage to call in
That's
to
the
report.
thing.
So, when the pandemic hit, the UN Secretary General, he specifically called for peace at home. And the member states, almost all of them responded with a commitment, and that includes St. Kitts and Nevis. But, he called on all of the countries to strengthen their actions and strengthen their resources to address violence against women. And he specifically called on that as part of the response to the pandemic. So, they're speaking of this as a shadow pandemic in the fact that this is one of the offswings that we see. This is one of the factors that the pandemic has brought about. And so, when we think of domestic violence, it's become even more of a pressing issue now that we're looking at the pandemic. So, we're going to be talking about sexual exploitation. We're going to be talking about sexual abuse, sexual harassment. So let's do a little bit of defining in terms of what those terms actually mean. There is a lot of confusion sometimes between sexual exploitation and abuse on the one hand, and then sexual harassment. And so, most of that really refers to who the victim is or who the survivor is in this case. Sexual exploitation and abuse, it affects persons of concern. And it's usually an actual attempt to abuse someone's position of vulnerability. So, that's somebody who's depending on you for survival, for food, a minor, and there really is a power differential in that type of relationship. Whereas sexual abuse really refers to the actual threatened physical intrusion of a sexual nature, whether it's by force, whether it's under coercion, and that covers a whole range of things. Sexual trafficking, sexual slavery, pornography, child abuse, sexual assault. And then there's a separate issue of sexual harassment. And if you're a woman who's grown up in St. Kitts and Nevis, you can attest to what sexual harassment is. You don't need a UN agency to define that for you. That's the seepsing on the road. That's the calling out. That's the lewd comments that you'll hear as you pass, if your pants too tight, if your skirt is too short, or even if you're wearing a long frock. So sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that causes offense or humiliation. And that can occur in the workplace. It can occur on the street. It can occur anywhere. And, it can be repeated, or it can even just be a single incident. So, these are some of the key terms that we have to think about when we're talking about what sexual offenses are and what sexual exploitation and abuse is. Now, if we look on our law books, there are already legislations that are being updated and that have been updated that speak specifically to crimes of a sexual nature, to sexual offenses. I think we have 3 that, we're going to specifically pay attention to. Most recently, we had the Domestic Violence Act, which was amended in 2005. Then we also have the Offences Against the Person Act. We have the Criminal Law Amendment Act. And then, of course, we also have the common law. So, we're very honored to have a legal professional in the studios with us. And so I'm just going to turn it over to her and let her maybe break down in layman's terms, for those in the audience, for all of us who are not lawyers, sort of what these acts say, who they protect, and, how much how far they have come in terms of the amendments that have been made.
Well, in terms of rape is by common law, and it is the penalty is defined in our Offences Against the Persons Act. Just give me a second. Let me pull the act up.
I was just there.
All right. So rape is usually involving penetration. And that is something that we can have a discussion about, whereby persons are of the view that it doesn't really speak to men. So that is where a person commits, he would have intentionally penetrated the vagina, the anus or mouth of another person, and he would not have had consent. and he does not reasonably believe that he has consent. And so that is something that we must pay attention to. It involves penetration. In relation to indecent assault, that is where you would touch someone in a manner without their consent, in a manner which would be, you must be intentionally touching the person, and it would be in a manner where the person is of the view, or what a reasonable person may consider it indecent. There is also, we also have unlawful carnal knowledge, which is defined in our Criminal Amendment Act. Let me read that. Apologies. Criminal Law Amendment Act, Section 3, which speaks to the defilement of a girl under 14 years. Section 4 speaks to the defilement of a girl between 14 and 16, as 16 is the age of consent.
Right.
There is also incest, which we don't speak much about, and that is with familial relations.
What does may I ask what the law on incest, how clear it is, what it looks like?
Let me read that for you.
Because I know, we, and in our pre-discussions and, even as a society, we know that this is actually something that is far more prevalent than many of us are willing to admit. But, that being said, is this something that's actually legally been defined? Has it legally
been defined in the Offences Against Persons Act?
Section
74.
And that is where a person commits the offense who, knowing that another person is by blood relationship, his or her parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, grandchild, uncle, niece, aunt, or nephew, as the case may be, has sexual intercourse with that person. Person commits this offense, who commits this offense is liable on conviction to imprisonment, A, if committed by an adult with a person under 16 years for life, B, if committed by an adult with a person 16 years or more for 10 years, and C, if committed between minors 14 years or more for 2 years. I can say that this is not something that is reported quite often.
When we speak about minors here, does it cover men, young boys? Does the word minor cover
Yes.
young boys? Okay, great. Because, with the law, you have to be so particular. Because if it says girls, then...
Just as the Criminal Law Amendment Act would have stated, it would say a girl child, if it were to be that specific.
Okay, so I want to ask a question here on that, though, because, here we always say everybody is related to everyone. So is it just your first cousins when it comes to uncles, nieces, and nephews and stuff like that? Is it just your immediate blood relatives? Can your second cousin or your third cousin, those kind of persons be included in the incest bracket, or is it just more specific in terms of like direct blood relation?
Well, the law gives specifics as it relates to who the family member should be. It says parent, child, brother, sister, grandparent, grandchild, uncle, niece, aunt, or nephew, as the case may be.
So the direct first relation then?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, and I think that also would cover statutory rape, because I know that's another issue. I don't know if there's a specific section of the law that speaks to statutory rape, but I know that is another issue that has been a hot discussion recently, in terms of the age of consent, in terms of what statutory rape actually looks like.
Well, for our jurisdiction, we don't necessarily call it statutory rape. We call it unlawful carnal knowledge. And that is, again, criminal law, the Criminal Law Amendment Act. So that is where a person who unlawfully, and there's two sections, firstly. There's under 14, and that's Section 3 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act. And that's where any person who unlawfully and carnally knows any girl under the age of 14 years, he would have committed an indictable offense and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for life. So that is under 14 years. So we call it unlawful carnal knowledge.
And here in this law, it's specific to girls only. Is that it? Because we
Yes.
just say girls. So we
Yes.
don't even have the word minors, which would cover young boys as well. So are our laws basically saying that unlawful carnal knowledge does not apply to young men?
It applies to girls. Any person who unlawfully and carnally knows any girl
Girl.
under the age of 14 years commits an indictable offense and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for life. Any person who attempts to have unlawful carnal knowledge of any girl under the age of 14 years commits an offense and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years with or without hard labor. Provided that in the case of an offender whose age does not exceed 16 years, the court may, instead of sentencing him to any term of imprisonment, order him to corporal punishment.
All right, and so that specifically says that the perpetrator is a him as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, again, it would concern the act of
Penetration.
Penetration.
So
Okay.
that is the underlying act. And again, there is the defilement of a girl between 14 and 16. And so that reads, unlawfully and carnally, any person who unlawfully and carnally knows or attempts to have unlawful carnal knowledge of any girl being of or above the age of 14 years and under the age of 16 years, or unlawfully and carnally knows or attempts to have unlawful carnal knowledge of any female, idiot or imbecile, woman or girl under circumstances which do not amount to rape, but which prove that the offender knew at the time of the commission of offense that the woman or girl would have been an imbecile or idiot, commits an offense and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for life.
All right. So when we speak up, okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Disil, to cut you off. We've gotten a lot of information about the law. We do have to pause to take a very brief commercial break to hear from our sponsors. But I know that with all this information that we've gotten, we're ready to have a very heated discussion about the way that this law is actually carried out and the way our society views these acts and the responses to it. So thank you for tuning in. Please join us after the commercial break. You are listening to Alarm Clock Special Edition, Sexual Offenses, Policy and Activism.
Gift for Dad's birthday? Click. Ooh, Janice's retirement party? Click. Outfit for my girl's wedding? Click. With TDC Airbox, you click, we ship. Register for your free US mailbox today and shop all your favorite stores online. Enjoy the convenience. Free consolidation up to £10. Competitive rates. Free package tracking account with live notifications. Free delivery and, of course, excellent customer service. Visit our website at tdcairbox.com and register today. For more information, visit our offices at the C.A. Paul Industrial Site in St. Kitts and Penny's Industrial Site in Nevis. Follow us on social media at TDC Airbox. TDC Airbox. You click, we ship. Terms and conditions apply.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
At The Cable, we know being local means supporting our own, and our customers deserve the best. Our customers deserve platinum. So now, all customers of The Cable qualify for our new Platinum Loyalty Card. An elite MasterCard experience that lets you support your own like never before. Instantly send money to any Platinum Loyalty member at home or around the world. Shop online or in person anywhere MasterCard is accepted. Save with no interest and 0 annual fees. And the best part? If you're a Cable customer, you are already pre-approved. Just visit the Cable building in Bastere or sign up online at www.thecable.net. Get your Platinum Loyalty Card today because you deserve platinum. Terms and conditions apply.
People make the world go round.
Welcome back. It is another edition of Alarm Clock. We are here in the studios discussing sexual offenses, policy, and activism. I have two very well-versed guests here. I have Lenine, who is a legal counsel, and I have Desil, a civil activist, a civic activist and youngster who has been standing up and speaking out about sexual offenses. So if you're just joining us, we have been speaking about the 16 days of activism, the fact that the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women was the 25th of November. So you'll be hearing in society, you'll be seeing on the news, our Department of Gender Affairs, both in St. Kitts and Nevis, are raising awareness to these issues. We discussed the laws that are on our books, the way that sexual offenses are defined, some of the penalties for sexual offenses. And I think we left off at a very interesting juncture. As we were listening to the reading of the laws, we were noticing that, there were definitely some loopholes, some areas where the laws didn't apply, for example, to young men who have been sexually abused or sexually assaulted. And, interestingly enough, when we are speaking about gender equality and when we're speaking about gender-based violence, that does not just mean violence against women. Gender-based violence also extends to speak about violence against boys, violence against men. And that is something that is also very taboo in our society to discuss, and something that, no man wants to get up and say, I was raped. I was sexually assaulted by a woman, but it is something that happens too often. So we're going to be discussing, now we've spoken a bit more about the laws, what about how our country and our people respond? Who are the first responders when these crimes are committed? How does our police force handle it? How does our social services tackle it? So I'm going to open it up. I know that before the break, Desil, had some things to say on the laws, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Yeah, we were talking about, what we were talking about on the last thing. Yeah, we were talking about the definitions where, where it says specifically girls, where it excludes boys, and that's sad because it shows that we are not protecting our young men and our men. And the UNICEF, they actually did a study in the Eastern Caribbean in relation to society's responses to sexual crimes and child sex abuse in particular. And they got some really alarming responses. They mentioned here in Barbados, in particular, the focus group thought that sexually abused boys were neglected, despite the reality that these male victims suffer the same harmful emotional effects as their female counterparts. There was a questionnaire that they did as well, where they asked if only homosexual men engage in sex with boys. 60% of persons disagreed, 11% of persons weren't sure, 24% of persons agreed. So these things are happening, and we can't just have laws here in this federation that just specifically target women. Yes, penetration. Well, penetration might be the definition for rape. You can penetrate a man as well, and men alone aren't only the person who rape. Rape is unwarranted sexual, by definition in our laws, it involves penetration. But there are a lot of young men who felt that they were raped by older women or other women because they, pushed them into sexual positions that they weren't ready for or they weren't comfortable with. I've spoken to a number of young men who feel like they don't have healthy relationships right now because of how they started out having sex, So
I wouldn't say that law is silent as it relates to men, because there is also the offense of indecent assault, as I would have mentioned earlier, and so that is available to men as well. While I will admit that it may not be as extensive as the laws that protect the women, there are laws that are existing to protect men. What I find is the issue is the way that society perceives what happens to young men and boys. Usually, if something happens, a man is ashamed or a boy is ashamed to say, I was indecently touched, inappropriately touched. And perhaps when reported, because a number of times in high school, when you report something like that, you would be tapped on the hand and say, what's wrong with you? You should be happy that a girl touched you. And so it has a lot to do with societal perceptions.
Yeah.
But there is protection under the law.
So if I'm a boy and I'm touched inappropriately, or we can't say raped based on the definition of the law, but touched inappropriately by a woman, I'm protected under the
Indecent assault.
indecent assault. What happens if it's a man? Is it the same thing? Is it an indecent assault? I'm
Yes.
protected under that, but I can't
You can't
by legal
rape
definition be
Is
raped
no.
By a
Okay.
woman.
by a woman or a man.
Because there's no
Because
you have to be penetrated,
have to be
and that's
penetrated.
strictly under law. You see, law is usually the conscience of society, and that is what propels what we have on our books. And law changes as society changes, and so if it is, and that is where advocacy and activism comes into play as well. It's useful in the sense that it informs the public that these are things that we need to change, and so that voices to our legislators that these are things we need to pay attention to. And so activism doesn't fall on deaf ears, it actually helps. So it perhaps need to be increased, and that is why I think you're doing an excellent job as well by informing the public that these are things that we need to pay attention to and to have a conversation about.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Lenin brought up a very, very, very key issue, and that's the issue of social perception and the way that our society perceives these issues. I know that in the recent weeks and months, there's been a lot of discussion around this topic. We've had several victims of sexual assault who have come forward many years later. They've shared their stories on Facebook. They've shared their stories with the public. And, it's taken so much courage to do so. But our response as a society, in terms of the way that we respond to the victims, the way that we respond immediately when they report, the way that we respond after they wait a little while, and the way that we respond and treat the perpetrators of this. What are your thoughts? How does our society respond?
My thing is we need to have a collective response of outrage. In the same UNICEF report, they mentioned that some of the things that society lacks when it comes to child sex abuse is lack of awareness on the effects, lack of collective outrage, an ineffective system. We consider the male status above child protection. These are the ways that we're responding, and we need to change that. I know, from my experience going to school, there was a young lady who was sexually molested, and she was ridiculed by other youngsters, more than often men. Well, directly, because I'd have had my friends around, and they're laughing after her, jeering at her, and stuff like that. And it was not her fault. She's a young girl. It was primary school even. A young girl in primary school who was taken advantage by an older guy, and we're laughing at her. No one's comforting on, saying if I see that, let's say something happens to me, I'm not going to want to come out. Another young lady seeing that,
Exactly.
she's not going to want to come out, because we don't want to experience that same kind of ridicule, and it's never your fault. And stigmatism. Why are we ridiculing the victims?
Yeah.
And then we get the persons who commit these crimes, whether it be an average Joe on the street, or someone who is a executive on a board, or even a government official. We just have them reintegrated back into society like nothing happens. And one of the things, and we're influenced a lot by American media. I say globalization in the broader sense, because we get touched by various cultures around the world. So we see all of the positive movements when it comes to human rights and protections for other countries. We have #MeToo, we have Black Lives Matter, we have LGBT rights and all of these things happening around the world. And we see that, we understand it, we want to support them being progressive, we put up our Black Lives Matter signs, we do all of the things, and we support, we change our Facebook picture to, the colored flag, the LGBT colored flag for a day or whatever it is.
But then
it comes to home now,
Exactly.
we're just here and we are sitting down, and we're not doing anything. So
Understood.
we're kind of being a hypocrite, in the
Yes,
sense that, we know what's right, but we're not doing what's right. And that's one of the reasons why, for me, I felt it was important for me, to go out and stand in the street, because I see and I understand the power of activism when
If
it
I
happens
may,
in the rest.
Was there a particular incident that inspired you to take action?
I don't think it was a particular incident, because it's something that I've had a passion for, but I've always said, and I think, what I think inspired me the most, I think one of the more recent stories that came out in Nevis. For months, I've been on Facebook, beating the bush about the sexual offenders registry. And then this thing comes out, and I'm seeing all of these people who are telling me, oh, we're not ready for this, we're not ready for that, jump up and in support of her and in this and in that. And I'm like, why are you sensationalizing the young woman's pain? You don't just talk for it 2 days and then forget it and think that's the end of it. No, we can't do that. We need to make real change. We need to really have real push and pressure and public awareness about it. We can't just sit down. So I said, you know what? I'm done with just sitting down. I'm going out there. I'm gonna hit the street. I'm going to show people that, yes, we kind of know, but we don't know. Because they say everybody knows. Like, I talked to a number of persons, and they were like, oh, yeah, we heard about it before. I was like, how you mean you heard about it before? Then how is nobody doing, how did nobody do anything? And I mean, yes, it's allegations for now, allegations. And when you hear about it, it's allegations. But why wasn't there an investigation?
How do you know there wasn't an investigation?
Maybe there was an investigation and it fell off, because there's so many stories that I've heard recently where even there pressure inside the system to prevent cases from coming to fruition and stuff like that. There are parents who take deals under the table and all of these kind of things. In the same UNICEF publication, it was mentioned that in some countries, while a parent, a counselor, or a church member or something, there's a penalty for them for not reporting a crime. Parents go without that penalty. You know, so a parent could know that something is happening in their house, not do anything about it, and not face any kind of legal ramifications. It's scary.
And I think as a society, we can't underestimate the fact that this victim blaming and the amount of victim shaming that we do. I mean, how many times you hear, oh, she deserved it, oh, she a play big woman, like oh, she a forced rape, why she dressed like this. Yes. That the way that we construct that identity is really a tool for oppression. Mm-hmm. It's that language and the way that we blame the victim is a tool that's used to suppress their story and really suppress their voice.
And not to lean or on the side of men being the perpetrators, but that's what is reported for most cases. But you find that persons would tend to have the school of thought, she shouldn't dress that way. Yeah. She is inviting. But we need to have a culture where our society teaches men that that is not an invitation to violate the woman. That does not make it okay. It is not justifying you touching her without her consent or you violating her sexually without her consent. That is another conversation. I think it's usually a one-sided conversation. Why is she dressed with her boobs out? Why is she dressed in such skimpy clothes? But when are we going to tell our men and young men it is not appropriate for you to approach a woman simply because she's dressed
so much of our messaging is to women, conduct yourself properly, act like a lady. Where do we see the messaging to men? Don't rape, don't harass.
Oh, trust me, I've been hit in the streets. I know Joy know me from my she talks. It's just like, it's a little Facebook live that I usually do, and just like a little activism as well, because I'm about changing the society. I don't really focus on leaders and politicians and stuff like that, because they execute our will. So it's all about changing the society. And we're in 2020 and technology gives us a public platform so easily, so I think it's important when I experience various issues to come out and talk about it. And so I did one recently because I was out with some friends, and I'm a guy. So guys ain't gonna just walk up to me, or girls ain't gonna just walk up to me and sexually harass me like that, because I'm a man. I have that privilege as a man here in society.
Yes.
I have male privilege. Well, other people out there have white privilege and all that. I have male privilege. I'm not going to experience that. But a woman goes out, she can't go out by herself. She has to go out with somebody else. Because if she goes out by herself and she's standing up in a corner trying to enjoy herself, 6 and 7 different
Yes.
men are trying to go in upon her, telling her all kind of lewd things, and I'm standing there.
And if you refuse,
Ooh, you'll hear the
wrath.
responses.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I was literally standing there in a club with a friend of mine, and this guy, you know, he comes over and he already start to get on, and I'm watching him, and I'm like kind of paying attention, and then, you know, she pulls aside because obviously she's, and then he keeps pressuring forward. So then I step in and I'm like, dude, watch here. You know, and I was ready to get physical and violent, and I shouldn't have to do that, because, you know, if she says no, move.
No means no.
You know, if
Yes.
if you come, another friend of mine, she mentioned that, you know, she was at a bar, a guy came over, you know, he complimented her, she said thank you, and then from that he was eyeing her down, following her around the bar all night. She moved to another bar, he came to that bar
Wow.
and sat down and was like, am I disturbing you? And she was like, yes, you are somewhat. And he's like, okay, just once ain't too much. But partner, she just tell you it's too much.
That's the thing. They
Behave.
don't understand that that type of behavior is inappropriate. What makes that okay? Following the woman around. What makes that okay? And how do you think it is okay?
All right. Well, so, you know, clearly, there's a lot of work that we have to do. And, you know, these are a lot of issues. Now, as Disil said, civil society is speaking out. We're speaking up. And actually, young people right here in St. Kitts, the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, SCNIPA, would have very recently spoken to some of these issues. I think it was just this past week when they were in Parliament, they debated the sexual harassment bill. Because currently on our law books, there's actually no legislation regarding sexual harassment.
No.
And this is actually not only a move in St. Kitts and Nevis, but across the Caribbean, that it is a move to get the law books updated to amend our legislation so that it
reflect.
does speak to and reflect the issue of sexual harassment. There is a movement, a social movement, Life in Leggings, that it chronicles women's experiences with sexual harassment. And it was termed Life in Leggings because it's that women can't walk out with leggings without a man harassing them.
True.
You know, so this is a movement that is going on across the Caribbean. And I know that Disil was actually in Parliament when SCNIPA was debating the sexual harassment bill. We do have the bill in front of us. We have about 5 more minutes before we do have to break for the news, but we are going to get into this because this sexual harassment bill is something that is very promising in terms of progressive moves to address these issues.
Yeah, and I really want to applaud SCNIPA for that move. It shows that our young people are paying attention.
Yes.
They know what issues are prevalent in our society, and
Yeah.
they're willing to address them. So I really want to applaud them for that. And, you know, the bill speaks in general to, you know, sexual harassment on the workplace, sexual harassment by doctors, sexual harassment, you know, in government offices, sexual harassment by customers, you know, so, you know, as a customer, you could sexually harass someone's employee, and that also, you know, be something as well. So, you know, it tried as much as possible to cover, you know, different aspects of sexual harassment. It spoke to sexual harassment, well, it defined it really, you know, as for harassment to a male or female. It didn't go really into gender-specific sexual harassment, because one of the things that the opposition bench brought up was that there was nothing that spoke about the LGBT. And, you know, there are persons now who just openly identify as LGBT. And if that person is harassed because, you know, you're calling them a LGBT slur or something like that, because that is still frowned upon in our society, do you use that same sexual harassment bill, you know, too? So that might be something that needs to be specifically put inside of the bill, you know, if Parliament considers
Whether it
such
would
a bill.
qualify as
Whether it would, right,
Yeah. You know, so, you know, these are things that our young people are paying attention to. So it's really, really good.
I think even before our government employs or enacts a bill such as this, perhaps businesses can start by including certain clauses and policies in their contracts so as to avoid having these issues in the workplace. And it would make provision for persons to report these things if they experience it in the workplace.
That's another issue that they had, that businesses have, mandated that businesses have a policy on their books that addresses sexual harassment.
Because it happens in the workplace ever too often.
I don't know. I guess maybe some girls are just really comfortable talking to me, but it's really scary. And again, I say male privilege because I've never experienced it. You going in for an interview, dressed professionally with everything covered, you have on your nice, and the person that's interviewing you is propositioning you for sex for the position.
Wow.
You know, and you would be alarmed how often that happens. Alarmed. It's just like almost like breathing. So when you see there are people maybe out of work and you think they're trying to get work, but they don't want to do what they think that persons are pressuring them to do to get a job.
And see, a lot of times these people are prominent people in the institutions.
Right. It's a power dynamic.
If you have that element where you can report it, who you do report it to?
Right.
Report it to the person who's harassing you.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad to hear Disil say that, people are speaking out. We saw in the United States, #MeToo, and it seems more and more people are speaking about their experiences of sexual abuse, about their experiences of sexual harassment, speaking about who it is who has victimized them. And so, the more survivors of assault and abuse and harassment who come forward, the stronger and the more courage it gives to victims, because some of these people are being abused by the same person. We have repeat offenders who have victimized hundreds in society, and who are still living as members of society. So we have a lot of work to do. Well, we're almost at lunchtime. We're almost at the news. But we will be returning. We will be talking about Me Too, #Me Too, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Sexual Offenders Registry here in St. Kitts and Nevis, around the Caribbean, what's being done to that. And also the fact that there's a CARICOM Sexual Offenders Registry that is being worked on. So, there are countless advocacy groups across the region who are working on these issues of sexual offenders, who are working on, encouraging victims to come out, to speak out. So, just our last message, your voice is not being ignored, your stories are being heard, and these are very important issues. You are joining us live. We're here on a special edition of Alarm Clock, Sexual Offences, Policy and Activism. I'm joined in the studio by two amazing guests. I have Disil and Lanine, and it has been a pleasure spending the morning with you. Please do tune in again after the news as we have the second half of our program.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the Win FM Headline News. The Win FM Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Dealing well with a local reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
The police are informing the public that a previously issued autopsy report on the death of 32-year-old Rochelle Bennett of George Street in Newtown did not include the full toxicology content. The police apologized for the premature dissemination of the earlier autopsy report. The updated autopsy report states that death, according to the resident pathologist, Dr. Nunez, was as a result of severe cerebral edema, right hemorrhagic brain infraction, which is the swelling and bleeding of the brain due to acute drug intoxication. The drugs found in elevated levels in her system were marijuana and cocaine. No foul play is suspected in the death of Rochelle Bennett, police said. Orange the World, Fund, Respond, Prevent, Collect is the theme for this year's campaign of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, Junior Minister of Health in the Nevis Island Administration, delivered an address to mark the occasion.
With over half the world going on lockdown, millions suffering from the virus, and millions more losing their jobs, more individuals in 2020 have found themselves trapped at home with their abusers, thus suffering the loss of economic independence and so finding themselves more vulnerable to violence. The Special Victims Unit in the St. Kitts and Nevis Police Force has indicated that since our days of lockdown, there has been a marked increase in the number of domestic violence cases reported. We cannot afford for one viral pandemic to leave us overwhelmed by the effects of a social and hidden pandemic, the symptoms of which our society would suffer for many years to come. To prevent gender-based violence, we are required to create a room for community dialogue so that everyone in our society can have productive discussions that will foster mutual respect and understanding of the causes of gender-based violence. We must have discussions on dating. How do you know if this person is right for you? How do you recognize the red flags that tell you that this person is likely to be violent? Financial problems are the #1 cause of disputes among couples. So, discussions on financial responsibility, such as budgeting, are necessary if we are to nip the problem of intimate partner violence in the bud.
Minister Brandy Williams explained the objectives of the theme chosen for this year's event.
To prevent gender-based violence, we are required to create a room for community dialogue so that everyone in our society can have productive discussions that will foster mutual respect and understanding of the causes of gender-based violence. We must have discussions on dating. How do you know if this person is right for you? How do you recognize the red flags that tell you that this person is likely to be violent? Financial problems are the #1 cause of disputes among couples. So, discussions on financial responsibility, such as budgeting, are necessary if we are to nip the problem of intimate partner violence in the bud.
The 16 days from Wednesday, November 25th to Thursday, December 10th, 2020 was first initiated 29 years ago in New Jersey in 1991. Since then, it has become a global phenomenon with individuals of purpose, compassion, love, justice, and integrity, men and women alike, standing together in some 187 countries worldwide to say no to all forms of gender-based violence. The International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women was observed on November 25th and International Human Rights Day on December 10th. Beginning on Tuesday, December 1st until the 31st, 2020, Armory Bakery will again give back to its many customers amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The bakery, which has been making significant donations and contributions to the most vulnerable since the onset of the pandemic, will be embarking on a buy one, get one free promotion. Secretary at Army Bakery, Teresa McCall, was a guest on WIN's Weekday Voices on Friday.
This is a special deal in that it's going to be a lovely French salami sandwich, okay, which is $10 each. However, when you think of the fact that you're paying $10 for one and you're getting two, that's an awesome deal, right? And it is, of course, geared towards assisting individuals who would need the assistance, because sometimes I don't know if you would have this issue, but sometimes you come to work and all you have is that last $20 and you need to make it stretch. And this is one of the ways Mr. Amri has thought of to help the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to make your dollar last just a little longer. So it's going to be from the 1st of December until the ending of December. You come in anytime in the day from 6 a.m. until we close. You come in, you ask for a French salami sandwich, and you will get two.
For the cost of $10.
$10. I mean, it's $10 for one, but you get two for $10. Imagine what you can do with both of them. Somebody might have their girlfriend or their boyfriend. You want to share lunch with them. You only have $10, but it's the thought that counts. You understand? Somebody might have two children. You only have $10. You could manfully go in. You get the sandwiches. You have one for yourself, and you divide the other one between the two children. So it's really to bring some relief, because as you are aware, the economic impact that has been brought about by COVID, it's a difficult thing to deal with. Definitely. And so at Mr. Amory's hat is helping the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and this is one of the ways that he's doing that. So please capitalize, please come and patronize and so forth. Now also, just to give you a bit of a taste before the 1st, okay? So I see you're smiling.
Mouth watering already.
Yes. Now, he's also someone who likes to give samples. So on Monday, that's Monday coming, that's the last day of November, you come into the bakery, you buy anything. It could be the smallest thing. It could be a cookie. It could be a cheese stick, the smallest thing or the biggest thing. You buy anything, and you will get a sample of these delicious sandwiches. And trust me, I mean, they will be filled with goodness. French salami, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes on French bread.
Don't forget the love.
Okay, I filled with love as well.
Yes.
Yeah, love.
And
a splash of love.
Yeah, well, not a splash. We're trying a whole lot of love. A whole lot of love in there.
Yes.
Okay, so you come in, you purchase anything. I mean, anything, the smallest thing, and you can get a sample.
The owner of Army Bakery, Ernest Amri, was also a guest on the program.
Yes, Devon, I would like to also add some good news, better news. And this depends also on the general public, our customers and general public who are listening today. We all have to work together. We're in this together. It's a situation that we never expected, but in a good way, it shows us how we can come together as a community, come together as a family. Some families who are not talking realize the importance of being a family. When you have a problem, the most important people in your life is really your family, who you can depend on. And so
Amri used the opportunity to thank all those persons who have been supporting the business over the years. Antigua and Barbuda's new education minister, Daryl Matthew, is promising to deliver on his new responsibilities. Matthew was appointed following the arrest of former Education Minister Michael Brown on Thursday, November 26, 2020, in the midst of allegations made by a woman.
In the company of his family and the Governor-General, His Excellency Sir Rodney Williams, at 10:52 a.m. on Thursday morning, Minister Daryl Sylvester Matthew Esquire took the oaths of office, allegiance, and secrecy. Minister Matthew, who formerly had responsibility for sports, culture, national festivals, and the arts, says although he has a heavy heart at the circumstances, he is proud and looking forward to the new role.
I accept the responsibility conferred upon me here today. It is certainly not under the circumstances that I would have preferred. However, I do commit and pledge to do my best in this ministry with these additional responsibilities. I recognize that to whom much is given, much is expected.
We asked how prepared the minister was to assume the new responsibilities of the education portfolio.
We had very intense and long discussions about education in Antigua and Barbuda, what some of the shortcomings may be, and what the future of education could look like here in Antigua and Barbuda. And so I believe that while not coming with a tremendous amount of experience as the previous portfolio, I do have some assets at my disposal upon which I can lean for guidance, support, advice. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe the Ministry of Education is one of those areas that is impeccably staffed with very qualified and capable technicians upon whose guidance I will also lean.
He says he will follow the Governor General's advice and meet with technicians to include the Permanent Secretary, Director of Education, and President of the Antigua-Barbuda Union of Teachers. Minister Matthew's appointment follows the earlier announcement former Minister for Education, Science and Technology, Michael Brown, was to be relieved of his duties earlier on Thursday. For ABS News, I'm Ursula Charles Jr.
Michael Brown is to return to court on March 23, 2021 to face undisclosed criminal charges. Brown resigned as Minister of Education on Wednesday, November 25, 2020, a post he has reportedly held since 2014 in the wake of allegations made by a woman. He was arrested and charged on Thursday, November 26th, and granted bail in the sum of 15,000 EC dollars, ordered to surrender his documents and to report to police 3 times per week. After his arrest, Prime Minister Gaston Brown asked the Governor General to rescind Michael Brown's appointment to Cabinet. Members of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association's CANIPA were guests on Friday's edition of Voices on November 27th, where they elaborated about their recent mock parliament sitting, which saw a debate of the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020 and adoption of a national cultural policy. Malachi Ferguson, who served as Prime Minister, gave his stance on the Sexual Harassment Bill and the adoption of a national cultural policy.
Our sexual harassment bill, it actually started the 16-day activism against gender-based violence and the cultural policy. These are 2 topics that we found pertinent and timely to be discussed, and that's why we chose them for that. I was the mover of the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020, so we spoke in depth. The Sexual Harassment Bill spoke about also education. And it recognizing this when we were doing our research that this sexual harassment exists in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's very prevalent, but we just do not. It's our culture, right? It's our culture we're very touchy people and so on, and we don't. Sometimes we might be persons who commit the act of sexual harassment, and sometimes we might be the victim of sexual harassment not knowing to us because of our culture than the education. So this bill spoke about the education and sensitizing the public on what sexual harassment is. So we had the gender affairs person speaking about education. We had the legal, the Attorney General speaking about the framework in which we propose to put out, which entail the time frame, what constitutes sexual harassment. And sexual harassment, basically, one word that comes up all the time is unwelcome sexual advances, unwelcome. And we know in the workplace you always have these sexual talks. And in this bill, it says that it should no longer be, because it's uncomfortable. So anything unwelcome in the sexual regards, it would be under this sexual harassment bill as a criminal offense. So currently we have laws, right? We're guided by.
Let's let him continue and then you take the call
We're,
after.
we're guided by the International Labour Organization, but we don't enforce those laws. So, right now, for you to be charged, you have to actually have physical assault. So right now, we don't have anything against sexual harassment.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a bill just for itself. It's embedded in the public. It's embedded in the sexual violence. It's just a passing remark in those acts. So this remedies this injustice. The absence of legislation allowed perpetrators to get away with these acts.
The deputy leader of the opposition was Alaric Arachi.
We need to start to look at our culture and how our culture can come into play, and not only culture as an industry, but education and public awareness and what's not when it comes to our locals, persons from St. Kitts and Nevis, and so on. Just to sort of bring some awareness of what our policy was comprised of. We wanted to introduce some sort of implementations to nicely smooth out the cultural policy and what's not. So we had some points. We had effectively allows for ease access of funds by entrepreneurs wishing to enter or expand their reach in the orange economy. And first of all, the orange economy is like sort of the creative arts economy, creative arts industry and what's not. And that is a big economy nowadays, is because even in the tourism sector, you would find that the tourism calls on, well, not necessarily calls, but it's comprised of culture. Tourists don't come here just for the beaches. They come to see the heritage, they come to see the people, they come to enjoy our culture. And so we have to some sort of develop our cultural department, and that is why this policy is in place.
The mock parliament sitting took place on Wednesday, November 25th, 2020 at the National Assembly Chambers Government Headquarters and was presided over by Scanaipa's President, Patrice Harris. The sitting saw in attendance the Honorable Jonelle Powell, Minister with responsibility for education and youth, as well as the Honorable Sean Richards, Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and other senior government officials, parents, teachers, and students.
CARICOM chief veterinarian officers agreed to the temporary regional ban during a meeting on Wednesday of this week. CARICOM chief veterinarian officers agreed to the temporary regional ban during a meeting on Wednesday of this week. It covers all fresh, chilled and frozen poultry products, live birds and hatching eggs from the UK. The highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N8 is a strain of the avian influenza virus that can cause catastrophic effects on the poultry industry in Antigua and Barbuda and across the region.
This particular strain causes mass mortality. It has a very high virulence, a high pathogenicity, which means that a very small amount of the virus can essentially devastate a farm in a very small space of time.
The virus has zoonotic potential, meaning it can be spread between animals and human and is highly infectious. Dr. Hull James says CARICOM is taking this harmonized approach to secure the poultry sector, as research and analysis shows the virus is set to continue its spread.
There's a very strong likelihood that while it may only be in certain parts of the UK at this moment, within days, it is very likely to spread further across the United Kingdom, further across Europe. And so we also want to ensure that we are not in a position where we have to be reactive.
Poultry importers were advised of the temporary ban during an emergency meeting held virtually.
Naturally, it would have been a very sensitive issue, and they play a major role as well in the food safety of our nation. So a meeting was held this morning, Friday the 27th of November, to have that discussion first with the poultry importers so they are all on board.
The duration of the ban has not yet been determined, but the Veterinary and Livestock Division will continue to monitor the updates coming out of the UK. For the time being, no import licenses will be granted to import poultry from the UK into Antigua and Barbuda. Dr. Hull James says Antiguan poultry importers should increase their purchases from local producers who can assist in filling the void. Other markets, such as the US and Brazil, are also available. Leon Norville reporting, ABS News.
Live from NPR News, I'm Giles Snyder. Hospitals across the country struggling to keep up with a sustained coronavirus surge. Amy Held reports that officials are warning the holidays could worsen the situation as Americans face the temptation to shop, gather, and travel.
More than 500,000 Americans flew on Thanksgiving. Others are heeding the call to stay home. Sunday through Thursday, TSA processed some 4 million at airports. That's 7 million fewer than the year before. The coronavirus is surging to new heights as well, worsening doctor and nurse shortages. John Maskey, CEO of Triage Staffing in Omaha, says early in the pandemic, traveling nurses could meet the needs in hotspots. Now,
there's just demand in almost every single area.
Allison Bell is a traveling nurse from Oklahoma whose job has taken on a new dimension.
I'm having to hold patients' hands because their family members aren't able to get to the hospital in time before they die.
Healthcare workers are expected to be first in line for a vaccine, possibly available within weeks. Amy Held, NPR News.
The Trump campaign is pledging to take its challenge to the election results in Pennsylvania to the Supreme Court, despite a federal appeals court's assessment that the campaign's claims have no merit. Yesterday's ruling was the latest legal setback among dozens for President Trump. Overseas now, reports from northern Ethiopia say the capital of Tigray province, Mekelle, where dissident TPLF forces are under siege, is under heavy bombardment from the government army. The BBC's David Bamford reports.
Aid workers in Tigray have confirmed a declaration texted to a news agency by the TPLF leader that Mekelle, a city of 500,000 people, was being shelled. The Ethiopian military has said it intended to seize the city within days, but would seek to avoid harming civilians. The federal army earlier said it had advanced to Agula, less than 20 kilometres from Mekelle. The Ethiopian government, under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, has rejected ceasefire demands from the African Union, saying it is engaged in a police action. The TPLF has rejected Mr. Abiy's blueprint for a more centralized Ethiopian state.
In Iran, protesters on the streets of Tehran following the killing of Iran's top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, was shot and killed yesterday. Karim Sajadpour is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
By all accounts, Israel is the most likely actor to have carried out this assassination against Fakhrizadeh, and Israeli leaders have long been concerned about the Iran nuclear deal and JCPOA, and if they were trying to sabotage or return to it, there was probably few things they could have done more effectively.
Iran's supreme leader issued a statement today promising to retaliate. Iran's president blamed Israel for the killing. This is NPR News. Police in Sacramento, California, looking for the gunman in a deadly shooting at a mall. Authorities say one person was killed. Another has life-threatening wounds. Sacramento police spokesman Carl Chan says officers responded to a call of shots fired at the Arden Fair Mall just after 6 p.m. yesterday.
The suspect fled the scene prior to officers' arrival. And at this point, our homicide investigators and our crime scene investigators have taken over this investigation.
Police say despite early reports, this was not an active shooter situation and appears to be an isolated incident. The mall was crowded with shoppers on Black Friday. European Union countries at odds over whether it's safe to open ski resorts for the winter holiday season. Terry Schultz reports with each government making its own coronavirus rules. It raises questions both for health authorities and vacationers.
When the coronavirus first turned up in Europe, two major hotspots were ski resorts in Italy and Austria. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is asking countries to keep their resorts closed this season. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte urged his citizens not to go skiing. The European Commission doesn't have the authority to tell countries what to do, but as Commission spokesman Stefan de Kersmacher explains here through an interpreter, it hopes they'll cooperate.
We're asking the member states to coordinate their efforts properly, taking into consideration the existing state of science and the guidelines that have been drawn up.
Austria, however, says it would mean a loss of more than $2 billion to shut down. Non-EU member Switzerland reportedly plans to keep its slopes open. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz in Brussels.
And I'm Giles Snyder. This is NPR News.
More than 100 Cuban artists have held a protest outside the Culture Ministry in Havana against what they say is a state crackdown on dissent. It comes after police broke up a hunger strike calling for the release of a jailed rapper. Cara Legg has more.
A rare show of public dissent on the streets of Havana. Protests like this are not allowed on the island, but many of Cuba's most prominent artists say they've had enough of what they're calling a government crackdown, mainly against younger people.
It's time for dialogue, and I think it's important that young people are heard, and we're going to work for that.
This demonstration follows a police raid on the headquarters of a prominent dissident group. Its members were holding a hunger strike, demanding the release of a rapper jailed for 8 months for insulting a police officer. Cuban authorities say they violated coronavirus measures, but they accuse the government of using the restrictions as a pretext.
The government authorities dressed as doctors and got into the ambulance and came here and entered the house as doctors. They broke down the door of the house and beat them.
Rights groups and the international community have criticized the action, with a top U.S. State Department official calling on Cuba's government to respect human rights. The artists say they won't back down until they've met high-level officials. The government monopolizes mass media in Cuba and claims these groups are funded by the U.S. government to subvert the state. Those protesting hope rallies like these will help take their cause to a wider international audience. Cara Legg, Al Jazeera.
That was the Win FM headline news, brought to you by KDP Enterprises, Caribbean Alliance, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading, The Grange.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime and bitters. Live, love, be.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
People make the world go
The Cable, we know being local means supporting our own, and our customers deserve the best. Our customers deserve platinum. So now, all customers of The Cable qualify for our new Platinum Loyalty Card. An elite MasterCard experience that lets you support your own like never before. Instantly send money to any Platinum Loyalty member at home or around the world. Shop online or in person anywhere MasterCard is accepted. Save with no interest and 0 annual fees. And the best part? If you're a Cable customer, you are already pre-approved. Just visit the Cable building in Basse-Terre or sign up online at www.thecable.net. Get your Platinum Loyalty Card today because you deserve platinum. Terms and conditions apply.
Are you wondering what to do this holiday season? Will it be the same? Will you be able to give your family all that they need? Well, with TDC Financial Services, all your holiday woes will disappear. You can get up to $35,000 unsecured for your holiday needs. Give us a call at 465-6516 or 469-5430 to find out how we can help to make your holidays happier for you and your family. TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
Listening audience, it is another beautiful Saturday. It is the last Saturday of November, and you are tuning in live to Alarm Clock. It's a special edition of Alarm Clock. We're speaking about sexual offenses, policy, and activism. And I'm joined by two guests here in the studio, Lanine and Desil. We've had a heated conversation this morning on the topic. We spoke about the 16 days of activism and the fact that the 25th of November was the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. We've discussed the sexual offenses that are outlined in our legislation and their definitions. And we've talked a little bit more about some of the societal responses to these issues. It's a very great day to talk about some uncomfortable topics, and that's what we're doing right here in the studios. We've spoken about the issues of victim shaming, victim blaming. We've spoken a little bit about the responses that victims get when they report. We've spoken about the fact that, some of these victims are not taken seriously, that they're shamed for the crimes that are committed against them. And we've really had a frank and open discussion asking ourselves, why is our society operating in this way? Why are we still in the year 2020 allowing these types of sexual offenses to go unchecked and unprosecuted? So we're back. It's another edition of Alarm Clock. We discussed the fact that a lot of these issues also need legislation, and the fact that our legislation is constantly needing to be amended, that our society is constantly evolving, and that we need to keep as individuals pushing for an evolution of our laws and evolution of our legislation. SCNIPA, the National Youth Parliament, has just recently debated sexual harassment and the sexual harassment bill. And so now we're getting into a very interesting topic, because as these pieces of legislation are being discussed and are being debated, we also have around the Caribbean similar things that are taking place. And one of the things that is taking place across the Caribbean is the establishment in various countries of a sex offenders registry. We already have in numerous countries sexual harassment legislation. I think in Trinidad, in Belize. And so now we're really looking at the establishment of a sex offenders registry right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, of course, we're going to have some questions about what that registry looks like. How long does an offender stay on that list? Who is on that list? What about the victims? Will the establishment of that list shame the victims? So there are a lot of questions, and one of the young activists here in my studio has in fact been pushing for a sex offenders registry. So let's ask him a little bit about what that would look like.
Yeah, so part of my advocacy is for a sex offenders registry here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And it's my belief that this sexual offenders registry would be beneficial to society, for one, definitely to prevent repeat offenders from going out, because we have problems here where someone sexually assaults someone and it goes under the radar, but they're moved from one position to another that still involves maybe children or other vulnerable groups in society, and they commit the crime again, and then they're moved around again, and it's just this constant moving, and people don't know. We know, but we don't know at the same time what's going on. And it's important for the public to know who these perpetrators are, and so that we can protect ourselves, so that we're not in situations where these perpetrators are, we're not in vulnerable situations for them to be tempted again or for us to be hurt. I also think it's very beneficial for as kind of a deterrent as well in a society kind of way when you look at it, so that people, okay, I'm going to be on the sex offenders list if I actually, do this. So let me not. So it can work as a deterrent as well. Yeah, just a general deterrent as well for persons, because a lot of sexual offenses happen here because there is no kind of ramifications. People feel comfortable just going out there and, sexually harassing someone, or even assaulting a young girl or a young boy or whatever, because, at the end of the day, you're protected. We blame and we shame the victims, and I'm not necessarily saying that we have to name and shame the offenders, but we need to name them and they need to face justice. I'm not about the shaming thing, because even the offenders themselves need to be rehabilitated. I think we need to focus a lot more on the mental health of these people, because pedophilia is a mental health disorder. So that's something that can be worked into the legislation as well. But I know, and there are a lot of other persons that, agree with the point that our society really needs to consider implementing this legislation here. There are places like Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and Belize that already have those laws in place. And, we can look at them, see what works for us based on those legislation and try to get it push here for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, I do agree that it is an interesting topic of conversation. But one of as interesting as it is, I'm thinking of questions. Things pop into my mind. One of the first things that I thought of was whether we had the capacity here in St. Kitts and Nevis to host such a program. A number of things that are, a number of programs here, the way that things are registered is done manually. We're not quite digital as yet as a government and as a country. And a sex offenders registry has to be digital in order for it to be effective. So that's one of the first things that I thought of. How will you input where would you store the information? Where would you collect the information? How will the information be disseminated? Those are things that have to be done digitally. Do we have the capacity for that?
Well, if I can just jump in here at the moment, in preparing for this show, I spoke to some of the partners regionally, and I see that in Barbados, well, actually across the Caribbean, there has been established a group, the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes, CCASC, and they are right now piloting a project in Barbados that they have successfully run in Trinidad and Tobago. And part of this project is to establish a sex offenders registry in Barbados. And what they did is they partnered with Offender Watch, which is a US-based sex offender registry management. So it's actually a registry that's specifically designed to register and manage sex offenders. And so the aim of this pilot project is to see how this partnership works in Barbados. Obviously, the relevant stakeholders from government and, the different sectors would be involved in this partnership. But it's a pilot project that, is started in Barbados. But the end goal of this project is really to try and roll out a CARICOM sex offenders registry. And the chairperson of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes is Jonathan Bagan. And he, I know, has been in discussion with DISIL about the establishment and partnerships for a sex offenders registry here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really happy to have Jonathan on board. And that's particularly part of Joy as well, because he noticed our activism. So, through Joy. And that's the thing. We're so integrated as a world through social media. And I think we take it for granted, the power that social media has. So, yeah, Jonathan and the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes and Operation Watch in the United States, they're ready to partner with us, to provide funding for computers. You said we need computers and all those kind of things when we are ready, as a legislative body to have that conversation. So there are groups out there that want to partner with us to get this thing done. So there is support. We do have support. We as a society now just have to say that we are ready to do this. And one of the things I want to comment on, again, with you talking about, things are manually a lot here, is COVID-19. COVID-19 has pushed so many things to be digital. Yeah. So, revolutionized. We have to pay online. We have to do all of these things because of social distancing and stuff like that. So we really have to get on stream, as a government and as a society, into the online process. That's very, very important. So we can get there, Janine. We definitely can get that framework done.
So having established that society wants something like this to happen, having established that there are resources that we can tap into, or people willing to fund a program such as this, the next thing to discuss would be, what is the criteria for being placed on the sex offenders registry? Is it that one would be placed on the registry having committed or having been convicted of one offense? Is it where you've been convicted of multiple sexual offenses? Is it that you would have been convicted of one offense but it was exceptionally violent? And how do you get off of that registry? Do you remain there? These are things that we have to discuss as well.
Yeah, I think that is really important. And the good thing about legislation and the good thing about, being an independent country is that we can craft laws specifically for us. Yes, there's going to be that part, that integrated part if we're going to be part of, the regional body and all of that. But we can craft things that, specify how our offenders registry works and, how we get there and whatever. So these are things for consideration that we definitely have to think about. And I believe, well, this is just me personally, I believe that, there are different tiers when it comes to sexual assault. There are the nonviolent ones, there's the harassment, there are the minor offenders, just as there's petty theft, and there's, grand larceny and all those things. So we have to consider all of these things when it comes to the sexual offenders registry. A lot of the times we speak about, visibility, exposing the offender might expose, the victim. And stuff like that. But we have this, what do you call it, the open secret society, as I'd like to say, because we know, but it's still a secret.
Yes.
So which one is better? Knowing on the sexual offenders registry or knowing secret and this person is still out there offending? So those are things to really, really think about when we consider those kind of things.
In terms of being placed on the list, I want to believe that it is necessary to be placed on the list, or it would be if it is an exceptionally violent offense.
Definitely.
Or whether it would have included gang rape, whether it would have included home invasion, use of a firearm or weapons to force the person to have sex with you. Those persons, when an offense is committed with that sort of savagery, that, to my mind, would qualify one if we were to have a sex offenders registry.
Definitely pedophilia as well. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think there should also be laws to support the victims and even rehabilitation, measures, even put in place for the offenders, so that, because just like jail is kind of supposed to be rehabilitated in a sense.
Yes.
We need to get these people back, because when you're released, you go back into society, and we don't want, when you go back into society, you go back to doing that thing again. So these are some really good considerations.
Now I have a question. Lenine, earlier she said the public wants this. She said society wants this. We want to see these progressive changes. We want a sex offenders registry. And, I think it was even a highlight because we had Queen Brown Sugar, who had a song for Sugar Mass 49 that was specifically called Sex Offenders List. So we are seeing some sectors of society who seem to want this. But I'm going to ask a controversial question. Do we think that society really does want this? Do we think that we will have the civic action and we will have enough buy-in in order for this to happen? And, what are our steps forward? Because the first step, of course, is to raise awareness. And then after that, we have to have a conversation with the stakeholders. But, how do you see the progress as going? So I suppose that is two questions. Does society really want this? If not, why? And then, what are the steps forward to making this actually a reality?
The society really wants this. I think there has been a number of voices aired saying that a number of voices have aired that we really need to consider a registry or consider reforming laws that speak to offenders and how they are treated. Because a lot of the times persons also question, why aren't we naming who the offender is? But we don't name the offender because we have to protect the victim. And so, yes, there is chatter amongst society. So I can say, from what I've observed, that there have been a number of persons asking that there is much more attention placed on sex offenders.
Yep. Yeah. So that means I'm guessing that assumes that there's actually a change. We're actually changing the mentality towards victims now, instead of shaming so much, more to try and get support for the victim and ostracizing the offender. So the shift in society is actually happening now.
Properly placed.
And that's great. And I think one of the things, and Janine, you were speaking about it before, an organization that supports persons that suffer from domestic violence or even sexual assault, somewhere that they can go and have a safe haven or help, for them to fill out the forms, to follow up with the police when things happen and stuff like that. I think that's really vital and important, because the system is burdened. The system can get burdened because, funding and various things that we don't see from the outside, but those things happen. And so sometimes we expect things to work and they don't work. And one of the things that the UNICEF said, an ineffective system is one of the reasons why people don't, pay really much attention to sex abuse and stuff like that, is that, so we need to get the system work, but it's not just the government's responsibility. It's us as a society as well, supporting people, supporting, the movement, giving them a safe space, reminding this person and that person that this hasn't been done yet, that hasn't been done yet, looking into it. And, mental health, especially because the trauma that people go through because of this is so ridiculous. So we need to have those things. For me personally, because mental health is kind of a passion for me as well, I know that a lot of mental health services here in St. Kitts and Nevis are offered free. Through the mental health units. You can go in and you can speak to a counselor at any point in time during the operating hours of their work for free. A lot of people don't take advantage of that because we think about confidentiality, we think about all of these other things that might happen, but you feel safer talking to a friend who isn't a licensed therapist, who probably wouldn't point you in the right direction or give you the right advice for you to get over these traumas. And we really need to talk to the people, and we need to change the mentality of it. Yes, there might be confidentiality leaks here and there, but if there is, and you can properly identify it, there should be probably a place where you can go and report that so that you can get some justice in that sense as well. So we need to keep everybody accountable. We need to keep the system accountable. The system needs to help us, and stuff like that. So we all have to come together and work it out, because we can do it. And it's just sad to know that we're at a point here, we're in this age of technology, information is so available, and we still feel like we're dinosaurs crawling here when it comes to human rights and social justice and all that kind of thing. It's disheartening as a young person. It really is, and we can do it. We want to do it, but we're so afraid, and we kind of have to let go of that. But I think
that's why Joy was asking whether civic society may be whether we think civic society would be on board.
I was, because I know Desil spoke about his journey, how he came to be outside the Premier's ministry, holding up a sign, a one-man demonstration of concern. And I know a lot of people approached me and they said, well, what is he protesting? What is he against? What is he fighting about? And in many other countries around the world, you see a strong and active woke civil society. I want to use the word woke because that's the word our U.S. counterparts are using. Yes. We saw the Black Lives Movement. We saw all those young people come out with their posters and their signs, and we see the Me Too movement. We saw them with their pink hats and their marching. And my response to all those people, no, he's not fighting anybody. He's not protesting anything. He is starting a civic movement. He's raising awareness. He is galvanizing social support. And, I think as one of the politicians spoke recently, about this movement, and rightly it was said that the government cannot do it all. And, it really is our responsibility as civil society to strengthen ourselves. And, as young people, it's our responsibility to our country that we make these changes and we really strengthen our responses to these critical issues, because the reality is we can't always say, oh well, the government I don't know, just wait for the government. No, because we are the people in the country.
But in essence, as it relates to a sex offenders registry, the government would have to play a very major role in establishing such a registry.
So, steps forward for the sex offenders registry. I can see that criteria. I can see that we're in the raising awareness process. So, Desil, have you reached out to anybody else? Do you have any other steps in terms of raising awareness? What are your next steps from here?
Right now, it's raising awareness. The campaign started, standing in solidarity, hoping to create a SPAC. And trust me, SPACs have been flying. I've been talking. The Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes have reached out and they've committed to us. I've been speaking to Naima Hazel. Everybody knows Naima. She's working to get Cyril on board and stuff like that. So we are organizing society. So, once we have everything together and we sit down and we make, a plan and create everything forward, definitely we're going to be seeing more and more action. Because, one of the things that I think happens here when it comes to legislation is that our government know how we act. We talk and then we hush. So if we stop talking and we just slide away in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then nothing is going to happen. So we have to have a plan. We have to have a movement, and we have to get everyone on board. And it's a human rights issue. It's not a government issue. It's not anything. It's a human rights issue. We have to protect are vulnerable.
Yes.
And so we just have to. We can't stop anymore and continue this, ear of silence.
But law constantly changes.
And
what propels law to change is society's standpoint on particular issues. And that is when we know whether we need to tighten up something or we need to loosen the belt a bit in a particular way as it relates to some sort of legislation. And one of the things that, as you would have mentioned before, needs to be constant is that conversation. Society has to continuously speak about it for a long period of time in order for the legislators to be aware that this is something that we really need some movement on.
Right, because the reality is that, legislation takes political will. And that's the political will of our legislators. And, what motivates our legislators to act is really the pressure of the people, the needs and wants and concerns of the people and of the country. So, if we don't demonstrate as a people that this is a pressing concern for us, then
we'll
our
never
legislators
see this come to fruition.
Right, will not have the political will.
Let's just say that a sex offenders registry is established. How long should one stay on the registry for? The reason why I ask this is because one is convicted of a sexual offense. You are sentenced to 5-6 years, whatever have you. You serve that sentence. A part of serving that sentence, or along with serving that sentence, is that you are placed on the sex offenders registry. Your sentence is complete, your penal sentence is complete. You're now on the outside, but you're still on the list. Isn't that, in essence, you serving 2 sentences?
I think it's serving 1 sentence. That's me. That's just me personally. I think it's serving 1 sentence because sexual crimes live with a victim forever. That trauma stays with you from now until the end of time. It doesn't disappear. You make steps to get over it. You empower yourself. You become a survivor instead of a victim, but it stays with you forever. And so the person who inflicted this upon you, serving 6 years or 5 years, depending in jail or whatever time it is, and then coming out and then it's just, back into society, I think it's very unfair. What we can do is consider the degree of the crime and probably a rehabilitation process. So if you can prove reasonably to whoever, is your rehabilitation person or, the psychiatrist or the counselor or whatever, that you are not as dangerous as you were, then possibly you can get removed from that list. But if you're still displaying these tendencies 10 years, 5 years, 7 years, or whatever down the line, then you need to be on that list. You can't come off of this list after 10 years and then you go back and you start doing this thing again. No.
And, just to interject with a little more specificity, there are countries who already have this legislation in place. I mean, we are a Commonwealth country. If we look to the legislation that is in place in England, they have the Sex Offenders Act of 1997, and that was amended by the Sexual Offences Act of 2003. And that, that piece of legislation does very clearly outline certain criteria, certain parameters in terms of the length of time, in terms of the information. So, just for curiosity's sake, some of the information that is required, that is provided on registration, is the name of the sex offender, their address, where they regularly stay, whether they're living with a child or whether they are staying in a household where a child lives for at least 12 hours a day, the specific details of their conviction, details of their date of birth, and details of their nationality. And once they're registered, the police, or in our case, I guess it's the Special Victims Unit, will visit the offender at home to do regular checks and to undertake an informal assessment. So it's a requirement once someone is prosecuted that they immediately have to go and register. I see the lawyer in our room is raising some concerns.
The reason for that is my hesitance in importing wholesale laws
Agreed.
from bigger countries, because the laws have to suit our society.
Right.
If one is to import laws wholesale, we wouldn't address the specifics of our society or our country. We have a move towards rehabilitation when we speak to punishment. When one is placed back into the public, how does one, with being registered or being currently registered on the sex offenders list, get proper employment? How does one get proper housing? Things of that sort. If I'm to apply for a home from the government, how would that affect me? And those are the questions that we would have to ask when conforming what we would think to be suitable for our country if we're to have that registry.
And I think that comes with the stigma of sexual offenses and sexual assault. It's a crime, and just like do thieves get negative treatment when they go and apply for a house somewhere? Do murderers get negative treatment when they apply for a house somewhere?
They don't have a registry.
They don't have a registry.
That is ongoing, that persons can tap into.
But they have a criminal record.
Yeah, they do have a criminal record.
They have a criminal record. Okay,
Yes.
fine. They
But
have
remember,
criminal
your
records.
criminal records can't be, shouldn't be given without your consent,
Without your
and
consent.
can't be tapped into.
Right,
by
but for
anybody.
many on many applications, you are asked to provide.
A police
Do you have a police record?
Yeah.
Applications for passport,
True.
applications for job, for housing, for loans, for lands. Basically everything in our society.
But the law that the UK law would state the specifics of the offense. That is not something that you would find on a police record. You would have the conviction, or whatever offense you're convicted for. You would have the conviction date and the release date. You won't have any details. So you won't have that the person would have gang raped or anything violent. So if that person is truly rehabilitated, should that follow them wherever they go, having served their sentence in its entirety?
Yeah, well, like I said, that's what I believe,
Balance.
There's a balance, and like Joy said, there are persons who check in based on the UK law with them. So if we have, let's say, a rehabilitation officer, if it is then reasonably
capacity again,
capacity, true.
reasonably justifiable for them to come off of the list, then sure, fine, why not? Someone raised a question here in the comments on Facebook, saying that while they support the sexual offenders registry, should there be also one for convicted murderers, burglars, bank robbers, and debtors? But these people are they're exposed way before that.
And there's a tier as it relates to the seriousness of offenses. Murder is at the top. I think very close to murder is sexual offenses, especially against women and children.
Yeah.
So those for sure, I can understand the need for the registry, because sexual offenses, they rank very close to the worst offense possible against a human.
Exactly.
But the others, is there necessarily a need for that?
Might necessarily be, because they're already exposed. We had a problem with the police credit union a few months ago or whatever. They were exposed. You can't comment, but they were exposed. The persons were exposed and on allegations. It wasn't proved yet, but they were exposed, and so society knows. So if I am now an employer and that person wants to come for a job, I don't know that they've been in trouble for whatever.
But our society is such that we have 9 days talking. So after 9 days, somebody else's issue is
Your record doesn't
spoken
follow
about.
you.
Yes.
That's
So
it.
that doesn't follow you because you don't have a conviction and you don't have a registry based on an allegation or a charge because you haven't been convicted of a crime as yet. So the stakes are different. It's like comparing apples and oranges because they're at different stages. And so while you can get around having been exposed, as you would term it, you can't get around having an active registry even after your sentence has been served and you are trying to live a normal life. It mean I shouldn't use normal, but you're trying to reintegrate and live a
society.
decent life.
Right. I mean, I think the reality of this conversation is that, you know, the three of us here in the room can't we can't solve all of these
Issues,
parameters
yeah.
today. But, you know, it's of course going to be essential. And when I'm asking about next steps, you know, that is really the next steps. We're raising awareness, but, you know, there's so many players that will have to come on board for this to happen. You know, there will have to be public consultation. We'll have to ensure that that every single aspect of any legislation is examined from all angles, from the way it affects the victims, the way it affects the perpetrators, the reintegration into society, you know, all of that. And that is, you know, ultimately it is a decision of the crafters of the legislation.
Which should entail widespread consultation.
Exactly.
Yes. We
For
had
something of this magnitude.
We had the consultation on the marijuana situation
Indeed.
a few years back.
Yes.
So you know we can launch. This is a good time now to launch one on sexual
I
crimes
agree.
and stuff like that. So
I agree. Yes.
we need to start that public discourse. Definitely need to
I
start that
agree.
public discourse. One of the things that a legal friend of mine mentioned is that in some societies they have non-governmental organizations that actually sponsor bills. So instead of having the drafters the government drafted, we have someone out there sponsoring, drafting something and send it to be considered.
I haven't gotten to that yet.
So that's something that maybe can be looked into as well. I don't know if anybody out there have a lot of money. Help us out.
I certainly don't.
All right, so I think we've really hashed out the sex offenders registry. You know, honestly, we've had an excellent program speaking about some of these issues. The reality is these are uncomfortable issues. These are issues that we know happen, that we see happening, that everybody talks about behind closed doors. But these are not issues that you hear us speaking about in public. For whatever reason, whether it is, you know, the fact that we feel that these are not appropriate issues to speak about, whether we are ashamed, whether we feel that if we speak about it, maybe we are implicating a family member, a friend, somebody who is close to us. But the reality is, you know, these issues exist, and so I'm going to go over when we're talking about, and, you know, just to remind you, this is a special edition of Alarm Clock. We're talking about sexual offenses, and we're talking about two aspects. We're talking about the policy, which is the legislation, but we're also talking about the activism.
Yes.
And the activism comes from every single person who is listening to the program, every single citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis. And, you know, the issues we're discussing, we have victim shaming. We have in our schools, in our churches, amongst our police officers, amongst our business people, amongst every sector of society, we have victims of sexual crimes and we have sexual offenders. We have parents who are turning a blind eye to these things happening in their homes. We have parents who are receiving payoffs when their children are being molested. We have big men who are grooming young girls. We have, you know, we have that stigma of those big men who drive in their car and pick up those high schoolers.
Buy them KFC, top up the phone, simple things that gain trust.
And it's so normalized in society. And, you know, I remember this one experience. Traveling back and forth for sixth form in between St. Kitts and Nevis. I was on the boat, and there was about like a group of 5 guys, and they're sitting and, you know, just having boy talk conversation. And, you know, one guy mentions that, and he's a bus driver, that the young girls do it better than the old girls. The old girls, they don't put in as much effort. And the other guys, they're laughing it up, ha 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 ha. And I wasn't thinking much about it in the time, but looking back now, I'm like, they're talking about pedophilia, and it's normalized as in pedophilia is right, and that's the thing. There are men in our society that don't know or don't understand that what they're doing is wrong because we've normalized it to be perfectly acceptable behavior.
After 12 is lunch. That's what they used to say.
I've heard that.
Yep. After 12 is lunchtime.
And while I have my issues with the registry, these are the things that I support it for. Because as you would have said, being placed on that list would be a general deterrence for many. I don't want to be on that list, so I'm not going to have myself involved in things of that nature.
Oh, you're going to be a bit more careful.
Yes. I wouldn't be down the bus stop talking about the young girls that way. No.
So my question, we're wrapping up. The time has flown. We're wrapping up the program. But I would like to ask each of you, coming out of this conversation, we spoke about a lot. We spoke about gender-based violence. And we haven't even touched a lot on domestic violence, on the scourge of domestic violence that is in our society and the way that we see it. And we hear the noise at night and everybody turns up their music and we turn a blind eye. We have these things that are happening to our children. What are our next steps forward as a civic society? What are our next step forward as a country to address this? Yes, we have legislation that needs to be updated, that needs to be changed. But how did we get to this point? And how can we change our society so that we protect the vulnerable, that we don't shame the victims, that we don't protect the perpetrators of these kinds of quote-unquote nastiness?
There are two things that I would touch on that I would have mentioned earlier to wrap up. Firstly, our parents need to teach our young men or change the narrative in the way that they teach our young men and teach them that these things are not okay. We need to change the mindset of telling our female children to dress a particular way so as not to encourage men to be inappropriate with us. We need to shift the conversation some and train our young men and tell them that is not an invitation for you to violate or inappropriately touch a female. We also need to tell our young men, if you are inappropriately touched, you have rights too.
Yeah.
The rights aren't reserved for the females and for women. You have rights too. And so you aren't to be ashamed if something like that happens to you, to so much so to prevent you from reporting it. That, as well as with the sexual harassment bill that was debated by Sniper, my recommendation would be for companies to incorporate similar clauses into their contracts so as to protect their employees and to inform the employees that these are things that we are not okay with. This is not okay. So having that reflected in employee contracts is a start for society. Those would be my recommendations.
Yeah, and for me, because I think that, hold yourself accountable. If you have a stance on sexual crimes and sexual assault like that, hold yourself to your standards. I try to, if I'm in a conversation now and I hear people talking about young women in a negative way or boasting about sexual harassment, I'm going to pull you up. I'm going to be like, that's okay. That's not cool. You might like it, but at least you know now.
Yes.
And I think we need to stop the silence. We really have to stop the silence on it because we know that it's wrong and we can't just turn a blind eye, because you turning a blind eye here turns a guy into a predator tomorrow. Because if you can get away with this things, the small thing here, you can get away with something bigger later. Yeah. And I've seen it happen so many times before. It's not just about sexual stuff, but just anything. You pick up you steal $1 today tomorrow you take
test
2.
the waters.
So
you
you'll
try
constantly
again.
be testing and testing
And
and
you go
testing
deeper
because
next time.
Exactly. So we have to hold ourselves accountable because society isn't just the government, society isn't just the laws, society is each and every single one of us.
The people.
And we have to, that's what we have to do. We have to hold ourselves accountable to our standards. We know what's right. We see it happening here. We see it happening across the world, across the region. So we just really have to do what we know is right.
Now, although the three of us are here in the room speaking up, there is a silent majority amongst the victims who really don't feel many times that they have a
Supported.
voice.
Mhm.
They don't feel supported. They often don't feel that there is anywhere to turn. Their stories, when told, are often dismissed as false or lies, or they're ridiculed, for their stories. I know a lot of people are listening to this program, via internet, via the radio. If there are victims of sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment out there, whether it be yesterday, whether it be 10 years ago, and I think that's an interesting question. Is there a limit of statutation on some of these laws? But what would each of you say to the victims? What's the message that you would like to send?
Report the matter. There are places for you to go to report. I work with an officer, Concy Rogers, at SVU. She's an excellent officer. She listens. She works hard. Report the matter. Don't think anything is too small. Things escalate. There are resources available. Although they may be limited, there are resources available. Also, I think in the near future, there must be a safe space or a domestic violence or an abuse center where persons can go and report, get assistance as it relates to restraining orders, any order a protection order. There should be a center that assists women who may not have the means, because a part of abuse is financial abuse as well, restricting the person from access to money. And so having a center that assists women in that regard would go a long way.
Yeah, for me, my message to the victims is that you're important, you're beautiful, and whatever happens, that's just one part of your story. You can be victorious. It doesn't mean that you have to give up on life. It doesn't mean that you deserved the abuse, no matter what anyone might tell you. You deserve happiness, love, justice, just like anybody else, and it's possible. And there are people out there like us here sitting in the studio who want to support you. Lenine spoke about the police officer there, that Miss Rogers, that is willing to help, and she's inside of the system. So there are people inside and outside of the system that don't have the negative mentality that you think exists and want to see you get justice. So reach out. Don't stay there and live in that and let that define you. But you can get help. You can get help, and we can change the system. We need everybody to work together.
Indeed.
Okay, and what would each of you say? Because I'm feeling very touched at the moment, thinking about so many of people who are suffering, but also thinking about the hard work that both of you are doing in advocating for this cause. So what can other people out there in society do? What can those who are legislators, what can lawyers do? What can those who are working in government do? For your side, Lenine, and for Desil, what can ordinary people do to forward this cause? What are the next steps?
Well, I can't really speak in terms of where I work. But one of the things that crossed my mind recently was that perhaps lawyers can offer reduced rates for services in terms of completing the forms in the Domestic Violence Act, because the recent act is very form heavy. And so in order to access the resources of the court, you have to have certain forms completed. And so some attorneys can, or an attorney can reduce rates or do pro bono in order to allow for persons to be willing to come to you to have these forms completed so as to get justice.
All right. I'm seeing someone on the live saying that there's a Center for Battered Women newly found by Mistress Bradshaw.
Yes, I heard of that.
Yeah, so that's a resource available, and yeah, even with the public, for the persons out there who aren't involved in the system, just show support. All I did was stand up outside the Premier's office, and
I love that. Absolutely.
It took courage. It takes courage to raise your voice about an issue.
The outpouring of support that I got for it was tremendous. The number of persons that came to me with their very private stories since then has been overwhelming, and they felt comfortable to do it because they know that I'm here trying to identify, with them and help them and standing for them.
And no judgment.
With no judgment, just pure love. It's pure love because, like I said, you are loved, you are beautiful, and you deserve justice. So that is the kind of mentality that I think that everybody in society needs to have for these people, so that we just want to fix a problem. It's a problem, yes, but we want to fix it, and we want to fix it for the betterment of both sides, both the victim and also for the perpetrators. Everybody can get the right part of this in the end.
And, just a reminder that this program is really happening. The special edition of Alarm Clock is really happening because we are in the 16 days of activism and advocacy against gender-based violence. And so, I just want to take a moment before we close to highlight that the Department of Gender Affairs, both in St. Kitts and in Nevis, has been working tirelessly and has really been working very hard to raise awareness on these issues. The Department of Gender Affairs in St. Kitts, they held their Silent Witnesses and Domestic Violence Board, which was displayed in Independence Square, standing in solidarity and also listing the victims of domestic violence between 1998 and 2018. And it's sobering if you see that board, the cutout of a person with all of those names. So, the Department of Gender Affairs in St. Kitts has a variety of activities that they will be conducting throughout this time. And also over in Nevis, the Department of Gender Affairs has been conducting activities. They held a launch on the 25th. And this Sunday, so if you're over in Nevis, Sunday the 29th, they are holding an event at Lime Beach Bar called Flipping the Script. And they will be specifically speaking about gender-based violence. There will be poems, there will be stories, there will be special tributes. And so, just to highlight that in society, this is an issue that we all share, that our government, that everyone is really working very hard to address. And, just before we wrap up, I think that this program in itself is really a call. So if you are listening, it's a call for you. Take this time to really be an ally. If you see a situation that looks a little bit off, do a little bit of extra investigating.
Yeah.
Ask a question. Tell a young person that, look, I'm here if you need to talk. If you hear sounds, if you see something that is not, it's not okay, step in. Show your support and speak up and speak out about issues like this that really matter. All right, well, we're wrapping up. Any final 1-minute words before we wrap up? It's been very much a pleasure to host this program this afternoon. Any final words from our panelists?
Yes, I'd like to thank yourself and Desi for inviting me and for thinking that I can contribute meaningfully to this spirited discussion. I think it was timely, and I appreciated everything that I learned and meeting you too. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the Alarm Clock family.
Yes, yes indeed.
This is, I think, my second episode here on Alarm Clock. I was here on election night, so I'm already part of the crew. But yeah, yes, I really want to thank Desi and Jihan for Alarm Clock and creating this forum for us to have respectful, meaningful conversation outside of politics, because it's not a political matter; it's an us matter, and yeah. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
All right, to our listening public, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to the studios of Win FM 98.9 for hosting us as always. To all of the sponsors of this program, we'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks. This is another edition of Alarm Clock. We want you to wake up and rise up. Sexual offenses, policy, and activism. Thank you so much for joining us here on Alarm Clock. We look forward to seeing you as you stay woke in the future. Have a wonderful Saturday, everyone.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects.
Finally, good news for all the kids out there. Dr. Fauci says Santa can't get or spread COVID. As Cynthia McFadden reports, all he'll be bringing is joy.
How are you, Santa? Hey, Santa, you're still coming, right? Santa.
Which got us to thinking. 'Twas a month before Christmas, well, minus 2 days. Would COVID this year drive Christmas away? Would Santa stay put at the North Pole this year?